Imagine one morning you wake up and everything around you is the same, but something is different. The familiar room suddenly feels distant. You look at the photos on your desk, faces you loved that your heart no longer immediately recognizes. This isn't just forgetting. This is the beginning of something more subtle, Alzheimer's, a disease that takes away memories bit by bit. In this video, we'll walk through the 5 earliest signs of Alzheimer's, not just through knowledge, but through moments that remind us that love remains, even when memories fade away. The whisper of forgetfulness. There are moments in every life when memory slips away, a misplaced key, a forgotten appointment, a name that sits on the tip of your tongue, refusing to come out. You smile, you shrug, and tell yourself, I'm just busy, that's all. But sometimes forgetfulness becomes something more. You begin to lose things not once, but again and again. You put your phone down in the kitchen, walk to the living room, and by the time you sit, you can't remember where it is anymore. That is how Alzheimer's begins. Not with a thunderclap, but with a whisper. A soft unraveling of memory that few notice until it grows too loud to ignore. Forgetting recently learned information, this is the first and often the most easily dismissed sign of Alzheimer's disease. It is not the memories of the distant past that fade. Those remain strangely intact. It is the new ones, the fragile ones, that vanish first. A person may recall with perfect clarity the house they grew up in, the laughter of friends from decades ago, yet forget the conversation they had just an hour ago. My mother still remembers the day I was born, someone once said. She describes every detail as if it happened yesterday. But then minutes later she asks, did you go to work today? Even though I had just told her. Inside the brain, something delicate is breaking. In the hippocampus, the region responsible for forming new memories, neurons begin to falter. Tiny toxic clusters of amyloid beta and twisted tau proteins form, blocking the flow of information between brain cells. Memories that should have been stored simply slip away. Imagine the brain as a vast library. Each day, hundreds of new books arrive, moments, faces, conversations, but Alzheimer's confuses the librarian. The new books are misplaced, some vanish altogether, and slowly the library grows quieter. A person still sits among the shelves, smiling softly, not understanding why everything around them feels a little emptier, difficulty planning or solving problems. The next sign appears not in what one forgets, but in what one struggles to do. Tasks that were once second nature, paying bills, following a recipe, organizing a day, suddenly become confusing. A woman stands in her kitchen holding a familiar recipe card. She reads the first step, then stops. Do I boil the water first, or chop the vegetables? She hesitates, lost in the very rhythm that once defined her mornings. This confusion comes from changes in the brain's frontal lobe, the area responsible for reasoning, decision-making, and planning. The neurons there begin to lose their ability to send clear commands. The mind's orchestra still holds its instruments, but the conductor has started to forget the score. To those who watch from the outside, it can look like carelessness or apathy, but it is neither. Inside that fog, the person is trying so hard to remember the way things once made sense, and what they need most is not correction, but compassion. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is to sit beside them, take their hand, and say, it's all right, let's do this together. Science and hope. According to studies from Harvard Medical School and Johns Hopkins University, the early recognition of symptoms such as short-term memory loss, disorganization, and confusion in everyday tasks can lead to a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease 5 to 10 years before major decline begins. This means awareness is not just education, it is prevention. To notice these small whispers is to give someone more time, more clarity, more days, where the light still reaches them. Write things down. Observe gently. And if the pattern continues, seek medical help early. Memory is not only about remembering the past. It is the thread that ties our identity together, the bridge between who we were and who we are. When that bridge begins to weaken, a person doesn't just lose memories, they begin to lose the sense of themselves, but it does not have to end in silence. If we listen closely, if we care deeply, we can still reach them before the whisper of forgetfulness becomes the storm of loss. The lost clock. There comes a moment when time begins to slip, not all at once, but piece by piece, as if the mind's clock quietly loses its rhythm, and every tick echoes in a different world. At first, it seems small. They forget what day it is. They wake up in the afternoon thinking it's morning. They ask, is it Sunday today? When it's already Friday. You laugh softly, gently, correct them, and life goes on. But slowly, the confusion deepens. They begin to ask questions that no longer fit the present. They talk about events that happened years ago as if they were yesterday. They look at you, their son, their daughter, and call you by another name. To them, time is folded in on itself. The past and present blur together like colors bleeding across wet paper, and the world that feels so real to you has become a shifting dream to them. Confusion with time or place. One of the most haunting early signs of Alzheimer's is the gradual loss of orientation. It's not just about forgetting a date or missing an appointment. It's about losing the map of where and when you are. A person may wake up and not recognize their own bedroom. They may walk into the street, unsure which way leads home. Sometimes they wander, not because they are lost in space, but because their mind is searching for the version of home that exists only in memory. Inside the brain, the damage spreads from the hippocampus to the parietal lobe, the region responsible for understanding spatial awareness and time perception. It's as if the compass within them begins to spin endlessly, pointing nowhere and everywhere at once. There's a story a nurse once told. Every evening around sunset, an elderly man would walk to the door of the care home. He would stand there, holding his coat, waiting. When asked where he was going, he smiled and said, "My wife will be home soon. I don't want her to worry if I'm late." But his wife had passed away 10 years before. In his mind, it was still 1985. He was still a young man waiting for dinner with the woman he loved, and in that fragile belief, that sweet illusion, he found peace. So the nurses learned not to correct him. Instead, they would sit beside him and talk about her, about the garden they once had, the songs they used to play. And as he spoke, his eyes would soften, as if for a few moments the confusion had lifted and time itself had bent to his heart's memory. Science calls it temporal disorientation. But to families, it feels like something deeper, as though their loved one is drifting through time, touching moments that have already passed, unable to find their way back to now. The brain's internal calendar, built from millions of connections, is no longer able to synchronize. Night feels like day. Yesterday feels like tomorrow. The present dissolves, leaving only fragments of what once was. It is easy to feel helpless when you see someone caught in that fog. But there is something powerful you can still do. You can anchor them, not with facts, but with warmth. A soft voice, a familiar song, the scent of something they love, because while their sense of time may fade, their sense of feeling never does. Emotion is the last language Alzheimer's forgets. Even when they no longer know what year it is, they still know what love feels like. They still know safety, kindness, gentleness. These are the coordinates that never disappear. Modern research from Stanford University shows that sensory cues, music, touch, and smell, can momentarily reconnect patients to the present. A favorite melody can light up brain regions untouched by disease, bringing flashes of clarity that no medicine can replicate. That's why families are encouraged to surround their loved ones with the sounds and scents of their life, the smell of their favorite tea, the laughter of their grandchildren, the hum of the old radio they once listened to on Sunday mornings. These are not just memories, they are bridges. Time for someone with Alzheimer's becomes a sea without shore, but we, those who love them, can become their lighthouse, a steady glow in the fog, a reminder that even when everything else fades, they are not alone. And maybe that is what truly matters. Not restoring what is lost, but protecting what still shines within. The vanishing path. There comes a day when familiar places no longer feel familiar. A man stands in his living room holding his keys, staring at them as if they belong to someone else. He sets them down, walks away, and hours later, he cannot remember where. He searches every surface, the kitchen, the couch, the drawer, and when he finally finds them in the refrigerator, he laughs softly, embarrassed, but deep inside, something trembles. This is how Alzheimer's speaks in its third language, through misplaced things, through objects that quietly testify to a fading order within. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps to begin subtly. A remote control in the bathroom. A wallet tucked beneath the pillow. A pair of glasses resting on a bookshelf behind old photo frames. At first, you think it's just distraction and the natural messiness of life. But then you realize that it's not the losing that matters, it's the not knowing how to find them again. Forgetting where you place something is human. Forgetting how to look for it, that's Alzheimer's. The disease doesn't simply erase memories, it disrupts the brain's ability to form logical steps. The chain of reasoning that once guided every small act, I had it in my hand, I went to the kitchen, I set it on the table, is broken. The trail vanishes before the mind can follow it, and so they wander through their own home as if moving through a stranger's house, searching for the breadcrumbs that memory forgot to leave behind. In the quiet hours, these lost things tell stories. A teacup left on the windowsill, a photograph found in a coat pocket, a light left on in an empty room. Each misplaced object is like a small echo of the self. A remnant of who they were, still reaching out, still trying to stay connected to the rhythm of daily life. Sometimes families find these traces and feel sadness. But look closer, because they are also signs of persistence. The person is still trying, still doing, still living, even as the pathways of memory collapse around them. Inside the brain, the parietal and temporal lobes, the areas responsible for spatial awareness and object recognition, begin to falter. The neurons that once built mental maps of every corner of the home start to misfire, like street lights flickering in the fog. To the person living with Alzheimer's, the world can suddenly twist in subtle, frightening ways. A hallway seems longer than it used to be. A mirror reflects not themselves, but a stranger. Rooms merge and separate in unpredictable rhythms. They are not lost in space. Space itself has become lost inside them. One woman described how her father would collect small things, coins, pens, folded napkins, and hide them inside shoes, drawers, behind curtains. When she asked why, he said, "I'm just keeping them safe." There was something achingly beautiful about that. In a world slipping away, he was still trying to hold on to something solid. It was as if each hidden object was an anchor to the reality he could still touch. And when she found them after he was gone, those small items became treasures, the quiet footprints of a man still fighting to stay connected. Researchers at the University of Cambridge call this stage spatial disorientation. It marks the moment when Alzheimer's reaches deeper into the brain's navigation system, the same network that once helped early humans find their way home through forests and mountains. When that ancient compass breaks, even the safest spaces can feel foreign. But what is lost in logic can still be held in love. When a person forgets how to retrace their steps, we can retrace them with them. We can walk together, slowly, patiently, guiding them not with correction but with companionship, because the goal is not to make them remember every path. It's to make sure they never walk it alone. Sometimes, as the evening light fades, they will ask again, "Where did I put it?" And maybe in that moment, the object doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that you are there, answering softly not to the question itself, but to the fear behind it. To remind them that even as paths vanish, they are still found. When the light inside flickers, there comes a point when the changes are no longer just about memory. It's not only the forgotten keys or the missed days, but something deeper, a quiet transformation of the person themselves. They begin to react differently. A gentle soul becomes impatient. A once talkative mother grows silent. A cheerful husband turns withdrawn or fearful or suddenly angry without reason. You stand there watching, wondering, where did they go? Because the body before you is the same, but the spirit inside seems dimmer, quieter, as if the light has begun to flicker behind the eyes. Changes in mood and personality. This is one of the most painful stages to witness. The disease no longer hides behind small lapses of memory. It begins to reach the emotional core of a person, the place where warmth, kindness, laughter, and patience live. Alzheimer's reshapes the chemistry of the brain, especially in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, regions that guide emotion and behavior. The connections that once balanced thought and feeling start to fade, and the person becomes a stranger even to themselves. They may grow suspicious of loved ones, believing someone has stolen their things. They may lash out, then cry moments later. They may sit quietly, staring out the window, as if lost in a world where you cannot follow. But deep inside, even beneath the fog, they are still there. A daughter once told a story about her father, a man who had always been gentle, patient, and full of grace. As the disease progressed, he began to shout at her, angry about things that never happened. She cried every night, feeling like she had lost him long before death could take him. But one evening, as she sat by his bed, he reached for her hand and whispered, "I don't know who you are, but I know that I love you." It was a moment that shattered her, but also healed her. Because even when memory fails, love does not. Somewhere within the tangled circuits of his fading mind, that single truth had survived. Mood changes are not acts of will. They are signals, the brain's way of struggling against the disconnection inside. Confusion becomes fear. Fear becomes frustration. Frustration becomes silence. When words can no longer find their way out, emotion becomes the only language left. That is why caregivers must learn to listen not just to what is said, but to what is felt. A frown may mean pain, a shout may mean fear, a tear may mean longing for something they can't name anymore. Empathy becomes the bridge, patience the anchor, love the only medicine that still works when everything else fails. Science tells us that the brain in Alzheimer's loses volume over time, whole regions shrinking as neurons die. But something remarkable also happens. Certain parts of the emotional brain remain active far longer than expected. People with Alzheimer's can still feel joy, tenderness, and affection even when they can no longer recall the reason why. That is why music still reaches them, why touch still calms them, why a gentle voice can still make them smile. A study from the University of Iowa found that emotions can outlast memory. Even after patients forgot the events that caused them, the feelings, happiness, sadness, love, lingered for hours. Memory fades, but emotion remains. It is the final refuge of the soul. There is something sacred in that truth. When you care for someone with Alzheimer's, you are not merely keeping them alive, you are tending to the flame that still burns inside. Every small act of kindness, a hand held, a song sung, a smile shared, becomes a way of saying, "I still see you. I still know you. I still love you." And maybe that's what truly matters in the end. Not the facts we remember, but the love we continue to give, even when names and years disappear. When you look at them and see confusion, they might be looking back and seeing the same. You are both standing at the edge of two worlds, reaching through the mist for one another. But if you keep reaching, if you keep believing that the light is still there, then even in the dimmest moments, something inside both of you remains beautifully, fiercely human. There comes a moment, small, almost unnoticeable, when the rhythm of time slips away. A man wakes up, looks at the clock, and wonders if it is morning or night. He steps out to buy bread, but the street feels unfamiliar. The world around him turns into a maze, and he can't find the door that leads him home. This is the fifth early sign of Alzheimer's: disorientation in time and space, losing track of where one is, when it is, or how one got there. It is not just about forgetting an appointment or missing a date. It is about the collapse of orientation and the brain's compass. A person may forget the way to the store they've known for 20 years. They may look at a familiar face and fail to remember where they met. Sometimes they may feel trapped in a different era, believing they're still in their youth or waiting for someone who passed long ago. Science calls it spatial temporal disorientation. In Alzheimer's disease, the hippocampus, the region that processes memory and navigation, begins to shrink. It's like a library losing its shelves. Memories scatter, paths blur. The brain no longer connects the dots between place, time, and identity. Researchers from Johns Hopkins found that people in early Alzheimer's often lose their sense of direction long before memory loss becomes severe. It's why they may drive to work and forget the route home, why they may walk around the block and never return. It's not just confusion, it's fear, the kind that steals away safety, a fear that you're lost in the very world that once felt so familiar. For families, these moments are terrifying. You call your father's name. He looks at you, eyes blank, uncertain. Then suddenly, recognition flickers. He smiles, softly. Oh, you're here. But you can see it. The fear still lingers behind his eyes. Caregivers often describe this stage as the hardest, because the person you love begins to live in another time. Sometimes they call out for their mother. Sometimes they try to go home to a place that no longer exists. How do you explain to someone that they are already home? You don't. You hold their hand. You stay beside them until the storm of confusion passes. There are ways to help. Experts recommend creating structured routines, fixed times for meals, sleep, walks. Familiarity brings comfort. Keeping visual cues around the house, calendars, clocks, photographs, helps anchor them to the present. Technology, too, GPS trackers, smart home reminders, can protect them from wandering. But above all, what truly grounds them is not time or place. It is love. Love is the only constant they still feel when the world disappears around them. As the day fades, the man who forgot his street sits by the window. He watches the sky turn gold, then purple, then dark. He no longer knows what day it is. But when his daughter comes, sits beside him, and places her hand on his, for a moment he remembers something deeper than memory. Not where he is, but who he loves. That, perhaps, is what survives Alzheimer's. Not the details of time or the map of the city, but the pulse of connection and a thread that runs through the fog whispering, "You are not lost. I'm here."